This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
Episode 175 is now available for download. Thank you so much for hitting that download button for the Detroit Sports Podcast. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me, my cousin, my favorite jive turkey, Adam, the Jock Strozinski. What's up, cuz?
Let's talk about jive turkeys. What did you do this weekend in fantasy? You got popped by my wife, and you didn't even put up a fight, bro. Listen. It was 109-47. I'm looking at it right now. Yeah. Like, your just batch of degenerates didn't even show up.
The last 2 weeks, I did not even break 50 points. And it's, hey, I can just explain it just like this. When Rob Gronkowski goes out and he's the highlight, your first pick, and you're dropping 110 points each and every week, and the Gronk man goes out, my team said, forget it. We're wrapping it up, and we're done. So I'm out in the first round. In one league, I'm only in two leagues. In the other league, I dropped 105 points. I'm still going strong, riding the coattails of Aaron Rodgers. But yeah, man, it was devastating. But the family pride still has a chance in that the missus earned a bye, and she's going strong, and she's going to be going for it. And I think she's got a good chance if her running backs can come through. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's been a little bit interesting. I'm still in it. I'm in the toilet bowl. I got a first-round bye in the toilet bowl, so I'm still fighting. My wife gets to move on, and she's taking on the number 1 seed. Your wife's the number 2 seed. She's taking on a buddy of mine who was able to sit there and come away with a 2-point victory. So that gets you caught up on our fantasy football. That's super interesting. Something more interesting than all of that, we've got a special guest in studio. Special guest. She's outstanding. She covers pretty much everything, but the NBA and basketball is close and dear to her heart. We've got Miss Blair back with us. I haven't seen you since we've done Porno Star Trivia.
Yeah, that was a pretty interesting time. And I will say that is like a way to welcome someone. From that point on, you have to be comfortable.
Oh, you were ingratiated right away. We weren't messing around.
No, that was the most. And I swear to you, I've got the sheet where I kept score so that I can bring it back for next time. So we're not revisiting that today. I'm okay with that. But I'm super happy to be on the show.
You know what? I was going to sit there. I was going to put a couple questions together to ask you, but then I was like, no, that's not really the tenor of the Doc and Jock show. That's more of a Vinny Stubbs type thing. So I'll let you pass this time.
Thanks so much, because if you remember last time, I didn't have much input. I was just the ref. I'm just taking score.
I'll just keep tracking who's scoring points here. That's
I'm glad those questions aren't up for grabs.
Yeah, we'll set the scene. We got a great podcast. We're going to talk about the Pistons, and Blair will give her insights as well as to what the heck is going on. I mean, I got a chance to sit and watch the game versus the Sixers. I was expecting a beatdown, and what the team that I saw at the Palace did not look like the team that I followed to start the year. So we'll talk about the Pistons, the ups and downs with the squad, the team that we love here in Detroit, and then in the final segment of the podcast, we'll look at the Detroit Lions, the week that was for them, as well as the key injury to our leader, our MVP, and we'll see how the Lions will fare this Sunday versus the Giants. But we definitely want to be gracious hosts, and we want to catch up with our friend Blair here. And we definitely have to give a shout out to Steve, because since the time of Blair's first appearance, no less than 1 or 2 tweets a week asking for Blair to return. And hey, Adam and I, we try to do the best that we can to please our fans. And Blair's here, and we want to catch up a little bit, see what she's been up to before we start talking about the Pistons. So since your last appearance here on the Doc and Jock podcast, what have you been up to?
I've been up to a lot, and you just reminded me that it's been almost a year, almost exact, not quite. And you're right, Steve. Thank you so much. He's like number 1 supporter. I'm so happy to be back here. And
for those who don't know, Steve wants to fire everybody but Blair. He wants to fire everybody who has anything to do with the Red Wings. Anybody who wants to do anything with the Pistons. He wants to trade everybody. He wants to blow up all of Detroit sports except for Blair.
And I don't know how I got into that position, but I'm thankful. So since the last time I've been on the show, I moved to Charlotte and I was able to work with the Charlotte Hornets. Very exciting, interesting season, and a bit hard when we played against the Pistons because I had to wear Hornets colors that day. You can't just outright put the Pistons colors on and the boss walks by. And I had a great season with them. I left right probably mid-swing April, and I headed over to USA Basketball during an Olympic season, and that was super awesome too. Colorado Springs was a really unique place, but I missed home, guys. And I'm back, and I'm working with your University of Detroit Mercy Titans. So I'm here, who knows how long, but happy to be here.
So what was your work? What were you doing with the Charlotte Hornets? What was your role there?
Charlotte Hornets, I was doing video production editing. I did a lot of game day duties. I did pregame with coach, postgame player interviews, and we had a show called Live at the Hive. So it's really funny and sometimes interesting to put this kind of hat on and be in front of the mic because I was behind the camera a lot of times there. Definitely an interesting experience.
Did you ever have a chance to run into Michael?
I did. So here's the funny part about that. So mid-swing during the season, I was an intern in Charlotte. So it's kind of like I earned my intern wings and I got to sit baseline and I was under the basket right across from team bench. I'm filming the game. So they call a timeout. When the timeout goes on, everybody heads over to huddle, coach, and I get up with my camera and I walk over here. I got to get my shot. I've got to get my shot. So I proceed to kind of get into the huddle. I'm excited. I go back, sit down, and immediately, I don't know how I missed it on the walk up. Immediately, I was like, oh, I just blocked the boss. That was MJ. That was Michael Jordan. Oh my God, I'm gonna be fired after tonight.
Oh, no!
I am gonna be fired after tonight. I just knew it, and I had a moment, and I had to get it back together. And I was like, you know what? He's probably happy that I was doing my job. It was only during timeout, and I went and sat back down. Other time I saw him, he was walking through the tunnel. Someone had on a specific gym shoe, and he goes, nice shoes. Of course, they were Jordans. So he's a pretty cool guy. It was a great organization to work for.
Outstanding.
Were there any challenges that you had in terms of video production, trying to get a deadline met or anything that didn't go exactly as you would have liked?
Challenges. Well, we talked about how much you like audio, how he goes into audio, and we had an issue with audio right before we were supposed to go live. And I don't know what happened, but I got from mid-arena, I booked up about 4 levels and ran back down. We got it together, but that was pretty scary, trying to get the audio right before going live. After that, it was smooth sailing.
Me, myself, I've never been to Charlotte. What's the town like? Is it similar to Detroit, the downtown area, the suburbs of Charlotte? What's it like down there?
Traffic is horrible.
Worse than here during rush hour?
Oh my gosh. You know what? I've been to Atlanta. I've been to New York, and I'm going to put it on a level of those places. In fact, if you Google it, I think it's one of the worst places in the country for rush hour traffic. Now, I heard that, didn't Google it myself, but traffic is crazy. Just avoid it. Avoid it during rush hour. Downtown area was really nice, and I think it's a great mix between Southern comfort and Detroit, which is, we're moving all the time, there's a lot going on, and lots of people to see. So I think it's a great mix.
Did you partake in the nightlife at all in Charlotte?
I didn't partake much, but there's this area called the Epicenter, which is downtown. They call it uptown there. That was immediately the difference I noticed. They call it uptown, but it's really our downtown. And that's a really nice area to hang out. It's lots of mixtures of restaurants and bars and clubs and things like that. So pretty good place.
So sticking with the chronological order of things that you've done since we've last seen you, you then, from Charlotte, you move on to USA Basketball. What's your role with USA Basketball? What are you doing, and how interesting is that?
USA Basketball, I stepped more into the editor-producer role, and it was really interesting because in Charlotte, I had a boss, and I've got a supervisor who can help me out with things, right? When I get to USA Basketball, I have landed. I am official, okay? I've got a phone number. You can call me directly in my office. I've got my own office, but here's the catch. I look around, and there's no one else editing, producing, or filming videos. It's just me.
So you got to wear all those hats.
I have to wear all of those hats, and we pulled it off pretty great. An excellent environment and company culture there. I absolutely loved working for them. Really exciting because I got the opportunity this time to see women's sports. We got to see women's between 16 through 18. I got to see men's as well, from kind of almost the grassroots or high school level going into college, seeing some of the top talent in the country they're going to be heading into your NBA drafts, your WNBA drafts, and some of the top colleges. And not to mention, I got to sit around and watch some Olympic games this summer.
That sounds super interesting. What was your favorite part of the experience?
My favorite part of the experience is pretty odd, but it was really cool. I would have 14-hour days sometimes in the gym, just in the gym all day. And when you think about it, it's like, oh my God, 14 hours of work. But at the end of the day, I look around, I'm like, I love this place.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the really cool part about it, being able to do something you love.
You're back in Detroit, so you're back at home, and you're working with the University of Detroit Mercy as a reporter. You said it's part-time at this point in time. What's it been like working at Detroit Mercy? I know now, getting to cover the team, it's a young team. They're going to go through some learning experiences, some bumps in the road right now, sitting on one victory as we record this. But they got a new head coach on a 7-year deal. He's going to have, Coach Bakari Alexander is going to have an opportunity to build the squad in his likeness and things like that. But early on, it's been a little bit of a struggle, but you're right there now interviewing them, doing some work there on the sidelines, doing some reporting. How are you liking it at Detroit Mercy?
Detroit Mercy is great. Another place, and I guess I've just been fortunate, where people really just welcome me in and kind of make me really comfortable with the environment. It's been great. And
well,
what
you've got a bubbly, effervescent personality.
Thank you.
You're like Alka-Seltzer. You got an upset stomach, just drop 2 of those in there, watch the fizz, and just let the bubble go. Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Get you going. You're right. You're right as rain.
Yeah, so even with Coach Alexander and Coach Scott, the head coach for the women's teams, what I can say about being there, I love to be a part of something in the beginning, right? Now, obviously, both programs have been going and it's in history, but we are at a beginning with Coach Bakari Alexander as the head coach, and I can tell you that he's committed and he wants the team to do well. And they are seeming to come along just fine with the chemistry. Like you said, little struggles early on, but you can expect that out of a new coach coming into the program. But we've got some gems on the women's team as well. You want to take a look at Rosanna Reynolds in the MAC conference and the Horizon League. You guys can tune in and keep up with all of that stuff on DetroitTitans.com. So don't underestimate. The numbers don't always tell the full story. So I would say, again, DetroitTitans.com, maybe because I have a little bit to do with that content and all, but it's a great experience to be there.
So it's one of the spots where we can check out some of your work then.
You can check out some of my work there, and I'm really looking forward to when you guys come out to cover the game, you'll get to see some of my stuff in arena on the big screen. So it's pretty exciting.
So now I know you've been to U of D a couple of times, and you're there all the time now. How does U of D match up with my alma mater, OU? Because this is like the battle of the Horizon League here. So
I'll take this one because
how do they match up? Because I know OU's been out there stroking it.
Oh my goodness! So I've been out to both, and it's been an opportunity, an eye-opening experience to kind of see a couple different sides of the coin. Detroit at this point in time is young, and they're in a situation where it's really hard when your leading scorer, a guy that had natural talent in Paris Bass, had some off-the-court issues, and he was let go and relieved from the squad. So they're trying to kind of regroup. You know, Bakari Alexander has to get his own guys in there and allow his system to take shape. So he's got a young team, and they're struggling at this point in time, but you can see his philosophy in terms of defense. You see that whenever there's a shot up, they go hard for the rebound. They play well. They don't give up. And so right now they're just struggling a little bit to close games out. So it's a situation when you have a young team, you have to learn how to win. Now, in the other end of the spectrum, Greg Kampe has been, at Oakland for damn near 30 plus years, and he's firmly implanted at Oakland University. So he's got a young team, but a talented team that goes at this season 11 deep. And so when you look at what's going on at Oakland, go out there and see it. It's a great environment. Both teams, you can go out there, have a good time, watch college basketball, and it's very competitive Division I. But right now, Oakland has a little bit of an edge in terms of their guys can shoot lights out, and they can shoot 11 deep. But With them, they struggle at the beginning of games. They can shoot anywhere from 25 to 30% to start games, and you look at it and you go, wow. But when they heat up, my goodness, can they stroke the three? It's unbelievable.
You get to watch Greg Campy go on ultimate tirades, which are super fun.
Have you had a chance, Blair, to go in depth a little bit with Coach Bakari Alexander, talk to him a little bit? We've had the opportunity, myself and Vito, to kind of just talk to him post-game and a little bit on our podcast, and you can get a sense that he's trying to instill his system with a young squad, and you can tell he knows his X's and O's, and he's got a solid foundation, and he seems like, what I like about Mercy and Oakland is the coaches are accessible, they're kind, and they can tell a little bit that, who's this guy asking questions, but they answer it thoroughly. And what I really like is they give you insight into kind of how to take the next follow-up question. And it's been a great learning experience on my end in terms of asking great questions and really following up and getting some insight regarding, hey, their X's and O's, their philosophy, and inside what they say and do in meetings, pre-game, post-game. They're open, and I really like that. You don't get a sense that they're just trying to just answer the question. Literally, Greg Campy, Bakari Alexander will give you a 2-minute answer to a simple question.
I was going to say that's definitely true. He seems to be very transparent, and I admire that because it can be difficult and challenging to be that transparent, during these times. I like to walk softly around this one, but definitely very insightful. I've even learned things about the game just listening to him and his breakdown. So when you talk about someone who understands the X's and O's, definitely your guy. And he leans on the defensive side of things. And I know that was a transition once he came in with the guys working with them over the summer, just getting them to fall into that system. But I do think that he's seen progress there, and they'll continue.
What is, you're learning now at Mercy, you're doing your work. What is something that is a career goal, aspiration for you at this point in time? What would be your dream job if you landed it?
Oh my gosh. What's so funny? Dream job, a year ago when I came in here was I've got to do sideline reporting. And I love basketball, but I love football too. So I wanted to do sideline reporting. My experiences behind the camera I've grown very fond of filming. I love filming the live event, and I still like sidelines. So my ideal job probably would be a mixture of the both. I don't have to just be in front of the camera reporting. So definitely want to stay in the broadcast industry as relates to sports.
And you can follow Blair on Twitter at BlairOnAir1. You can follow her, and definitely she reports on basketball. You can find her at Detroit Mercy, and she's doing a lot of great things. And thank you so much for being part of the podcast. And I really like when people take the initiative and say, hey, I like you guys. You guys show is pretty good. Let me come on in there. And we definitely extend invitations to those that are as passionate as you are. So it's great to have you. And following this quick timeout, we'll come back and segue into Detroit's professional team and the struggles with our Detroit Pistons. Stay with us. This is Doc and Jock on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I want to tell you about our newest sponsor, Team Top Cat Sales. Are you looking for team apparel for your high school, your club sports team, or corporation? Look no further than Top Cat Sales, located on the east side of Main Street in downtown Royal Oak, between 11 and 12 Mile. Through founder and former University of Michigan QB John Wangler's leadership, Top Cat Sales has developed a tradition of selling and distributing custom Adidas team apparel with the highest quality and best service. Get your organization, school, or club team all in with Adidas today by going to TopCatTeamSales.com. That's TopCatTeamSales.com. Also, follow Top Cat on Twitter at Team Top Cat.
I got to get this on my MP on my podcast, or not my podcast, my MP3 player when I go to the gym, because this song just gets me so jacked.
Yes,
this
sir.
and John Cena's entrance get me super hyped. I'm like a little fangirl that marks out every time John Cena comes out. I'm sitting on the couch watching WWE with the wife, and I'm like, you can't see me, and she's like, what is your problem? She's like, just sit down. You're like a rambling retard. What are you doing?
Well, I think it's that and the coffee. No one can see. I don't know how many ounces
I think it's 32. I'm not 100% sure here. Basically, it's as long as my forearm, so it's a little bit longer than my forearm. So yeah. It's pretty big.
I think it's a combo.
Yeah, well, it's the only way I get through the day. I drink about a whole pot of coffee all day long by myself.
Blair's looking at us like, really? These two guys that create this Detroit Sports Podcast Network like wrestling? Are you by chance into it at all? Do you peek in and see what's going on with the...
She's like, hell no.
I'm not going to answer. Steve might get upset.
It's true. We're going to talk about Steve later on when we start discussing the Pistons here a little bit more in depthly. We'll touch on Steve. But yeah, no, so you don't watch it at all?
No, I don't really watch
I don't blame you.
wrestling.
Don't worry. I don't blame you. I get it.
I'm open to it. I am open, but I don't in my free time. That's not what I'm trying to do.
You know what? My wife was the same way. She was like, I don't know why you watch this, how you watch it. It's grown men basically jumping around in pajamas. And I'm like, it's like a male soap opera. It's super interesting. Next thing you know, we're sitting there. She's sitting on the couch next to me and she's working on her homework, right? So she's sitting there doing things, and I'm watching it, and I'm just having a good old time by myself. And I happen to peek over at her, and I see her looking over the top of her laptop, just looking at the TV, and I just start laughing. And she's like, "What are you laughing about?" I was like, "Oh, you're not into wrestling at all, are you?" And she's like, "Shut up!" And she goes back to typing away. Give it 3 more minutes. She's peeking up over the laptop again. Next thing you know, she shuts the laptop. She's sitting next to me, and she's all into it herself. There's certain things where the crowd just kind of does different stuff. So like when New Day comes out, there's the who. She starts doing the who chant. She does the what chant. So like when John Cena comes out, she does the you can't see me now. So it's, when AJ Styles comes out, she's like, you don't want none. So it's super. She's all into it now.
All right, I'm going to have to try it out then.
Do you have any guilty pleasures that you indulge in on television? For me, Adam will start laughing, but I've watched every...
He loves the Kardashians.
No, yes, of course, and every gentleman.
You watch Total Divas too?
I watch Total Divas, yes.
No, it's so awful.
But my guiltiest pleasure, and everybody's listening is going to be like, oh, heck no, maybe
Little
click
House
it up.
on the Prairie?
No.
Oh.
I've watched since the better part of 2005 every episode of The Real Housewives. every season. Atlanta, New Jersey, Beverly Hills, Orange County, Dallas. It's just...
This is what I do a show with.
This is funny. Well, I don't know. See, the Kardashian thing, it's really, I guess... After hearing you say that, it's not surprising. My dad loves the Kardashians. He calls to have conversation with me about it.
Do it.
So I didn't realize they had such a male following. That's interesting. But for me, I don't have a lot of things that I watch normally. But I found myself when I was in Colorado Springs, because there's not a lot to do in Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Can't you get high like all day long?
Well, okay. So quick segue, I gotta tell you. So when I got to Colorado Springs, every day around the same time, I'd get like this whiff in my apartment. And I'm thinking like, ooh, they're smoking in their apartment, because coming from here, it's like, the popos are going to come get you, or the landlord, somebody's going to say something. And it literally took me a couple of weeks to adjust and realize that it was okay there. But I didn't indulge in that. I didn't. So my show that I found myself watching, I think it's called like Little Houses or something. It's on like...
Oh, yeah. It's on like HD TV.
Yeah, and they have like these houses that might be 800 square feet. And you literally... I don't know. I think it's the coolest thing. It's really interesting.
It's basically like the size of like 2 large rooms in a house, and that's your total house. It's your bathroom, it's your bedroom, it's your kitchen, it's everything.
Yeah, it was really interesting, and I think the most interesting and mind-boggling part was when people with children would go. It actually, if you guys have never seen it, if you've never seen it who's listening, it looks like the miniature house when you're wealthy and you build the miniature house for your children.
Yeah, that's exactly what it looks like.
That's what it looks like. And adults are living in these things.
That's
so
exactly
found
what it
myself
looks like.
watching that.
Yeah, see, it's good because from time to time you'll be like, okay, this guy's a sports guy, but I do indulge in reality television from the time of...
a lot of it.
A lot of it. But I never got into Big Brother, but I loved Survivor when it came out, and then, MTV's Real World. So I'm a reality TV guy. I really like it. And so, hey, I indulge in the Housewives. So if you don't want to get into all the cities, Blair, I would recommend you watch The Real Housewives of Atlanta. A lot of shade, a lot of tea, a lot of drama, and it's great. I'm telling you, me and my wife, we look forward to it, and we're like, oh my goodness, these ladies really talk about each other like this? It's great.
What's the one? Isn't there one where it's basically like professional athletes' wives? Like I know there's one for like hockey players' wives, and I think there's one that's going on with basketball players' wives.
Wives and girlfriends, WAGs.
Is that what it is?
It's on Ego.
He knows exactly what it is.
I watch it.
Oh my gosh, he could like have a whole other
I know,
podcast
we can do
specifically dedicated to this.
We need to maybe step this up, and maybe we need to put you on that for maybe like Sundays. And that way we can get the female demographic here.
And then, okay, you'll laugh, Blair. So I'm a guy that, from time to time is on Twitter quite a bit. And
guy used real loose right now.
Yeah.
I'm a guy.
I'm on Twitter.
Finger
I
quotes.
tweet a lot. And I do have a picture maybe off the air I'll show you. But Andy Cohen, the vice president of programming of Bravo, is on Snapchat a lot. So I did reach out to him on Twitter and Snapchat and was like, dude, I love your programming. I love the half-hour show you do at 11, Watch What Happens Live, where they kind of recap everything and have the people on there and they just kind of go over the show and stuff. So I'm like, dude, I love your show. And that's all I did. And he goes, thanks, bud. I appreciate that. And I geeked out. I'm like, oh, he read my stuff and messaged me. And the guy is great. He's so flamboyant. And he's so flamboyant and great. And
He
I
was
really,
so uncomfortable saying that.
No, but I just want, because, his transformation has been unbelievable. Because when he first started, he was super serious. Now he's all like spread out and is open. It's great. So I'm a big fan of Andy Cohen and his Bravo shows. And he puts on all the great reality shows. So I would say lean more towards Bravo.
I want this as a drop.
Yeah.
He's so spread open. It's great.
Listen to Andy Cohen. That guy's great.
Andy Cohen, just spread eagle.
All right, let's get back to
How do you segue into the Pistons now after all this?
Speaking of poor performances.
There you go.
My
Look
goodness.
at you, salt in the segues.
Yeah, there you go. Did you get a chance, either of you, to watch the game versus the Sixers? All I can say is if you did, sorry, because from start to finish, it was a situation that when you watch a game like that, you go, this, along with the Red Wings, this is what they do to start a game? Do they even care about, showing respect for the organization, themselves, the coaches, the fans that paid money? If you braved any money, if you paid any money to go on Sunday in the middle of a snowstorm following the Lions game, you go out to the Palace, you think you want some entertainment, and you think probably they're going to get a victory versus the Sixers. You go out there and you saw that performance. It was embarrassing. And everybody, literally, Coach Van Gundy's press conference was like a minute long. He was just like, this is embarrassing. It's on me. There's no silver lining. It's a disaster. And a performance like that, as we sit today, we're 13-13, is really embarrassing and tough to get your fan base on board when you put on a performance like that.
That's one of those games that you just, as you're going through the schedule, you're like, win, loss. That's a definite win. This team, after that game, that was only their 6th victory of the season. You totally didn't show up in that first quarter. You allowed them to score 32 points while you sat there and you basically mustered up 12. And getting to 12 was a complete and utter struggle for you. It's just, look, Stan Van Gundy's going to take the ownership of it. He's going to say it's all me. This is my fault. I'm the coach. I've got to do a better job getting these guys ready. It's not him. The guys have to show up. This is one of those games where everybody looked past the 76ers. They were checked out before the ball even got tipped up, and they were on cruise control. They thought they were going to walk in and just be able to get the W. Like we said, you look at the schedule, you're like, it's a W. It's a definite W. There's no other way, because what the 76ers put out there is absolute garbage. All right, the 76ers have they say they have a formula for what they're doing. Basically, they're trying to acquire every single top draft pick you can get, and what they end up doing is they investing it all into centers that seem to break down over the years because they've got like 5 on their team. They don't know who they want to trade away. But the 76ers are deplorable. They're a horrible organization. The product that they put out on the court is absolutely atrocious. And the Pistons, what they've done is they showed up that night and just didn't even check in. They were just like, yeah, we're here. Give me the W. And it showed. It definitely showed, especially in that first quarter.
But do you find that type of behavior really interesting on the professional level? I think it's just a reminder that you got to work every night. And I think it's a reality check. After that game, these guys can't take it for granted. I mean, it should have kind of been that way before because, the record isn't all that great to begin with. So as you're building and kind of coming over the hump, heading into the second half of the season, you think you take every single game as, I got to work for this. So hopefully they make the adjustment.
Here's something that Coach Van Gundy said after the game, and it's been talked about a little bit in terms of the preparation. and you blame the players, I kind of also take the stance that maybe, just maybe, Coach Van Gundy made a mistake in that they had a victory on Friday, and so they had a natural off day on Saturday. So Sunday was the snowstorm, so he decided, you know what, I'm not going to have the guys brave and trek to the Palace twice in the same day, so we're not going to do a shoot-around. And he goes, you know what, looking back at it in hindsight, what a terrible mistake, because they didn't come into play, they didn't look ready, and so I would say potentially there is a mix of problems with Stan Van Gundy getting these guys ready to go game in and game out, because right now when you look at the Pistons, they're up and down. They can beat a team like Chicago. They can beat a team like the Thunder. Then you turn around and lose to the Sixers and lose to teams that you are better than. So when you play to the level of your competition, that leads me to believe the coaching needs to do a better job in terms of getting these guys ready, and to not have your team, play for 2 days and not have and cancel a shoot around on Sunday, the day of a game. He came out and said it straight up. I made a mistake. I should have had these guys in here and ready to go.
If I pay you millions of dollars and your job is to basically go out there and chase a ball around on a court and try to put it in a basket, I expect you to be a professional. Look, you see that we're dealing with, Snowmageddon 2016. I'm going to be a good enough coach to not make you sit there and make that drive twice. Come prepared. Show up. That's on the players, man. That's not on the coach. The coach is trying to do a solid for his guys. He's trying to sit there and take care of them. He doesn't want anybody to get into a car accident and possibly get hurt. That's a coach being a good guy, trying to take care of his boys and make sure that they are set up. You have to show up as a player. You got to come ready, and you have to be prepared to play. I don't care if you have a shoot around or you don't. It's the same thing in hockey where they say, oh, we didn't get our morning skate in. You don't need a morning skate. You really don't. If you need to sit there and you need to stretch out and you need to warm up a little bit, do some calisthenics in your hotel room, do some calisthenics at home, maybe do some yoga, do some stretching, something. You can sit there and you can lift some weights and you can warm up. You got to show up and you got to be ready to play. I still put that on the players.
I'm going to walk the middle here, and I totally agree with you, because I was thinking, God forbid if someone would have gotten into an accident, then here are the headlines the next day. It's not about basketball. It's about, someone made the wrong decision. They let them get out in the weather. So I'm going to say I agree with you there, but I will tell you that shoot-arounds are important. It's just like routine. When you do something different, have you ever seen someone, they wear the same socks, or heard about wearing the same socks to a game, or it's just about routine?
I totally agree with you, because before I play any of my hockey games, I've got a routine. All my guys make fun of me because I stretch out before, I put my pads on a certain way, I get dressed a certain way. I generally have to get to the arena like an hour and a half ahead of time, and my wife's like, I don't understand why we got to be there this early, and I'm like, it's just a mental thing for me. It gets me drilled and focused in, so I can sit there and go out there and try to perform to the best of my limited capabilities here. And she's like, you're insane. And I know, so I get it, right? I understand the routine, and I know when something isn't right, it throws a monkey wrench into things. So I get it. But at the same point, you see what you're dealing with, right? I mean, honestly, I shoveled snow the day that on Sunday, I shoveled snow, I think, 4 times, and then I had to go back on Monday morning and shovel again. That's how much snow we had. And where I live, we ended up getting, I think, anywhere from 9 to 10 inches of snow. It was absolutely atrocious. There was no reason you should have been on the road that day. So I get it. If you need to have a shoot around, you can do things at home. There are. I mean, most of these players have a basketball court out on their backyard or in their basement or someplace that they can go. If you need a shoot around that bad, show up at the facility early then and do your shoot around. Just because your coach doesn't make it mandatory doesn't mean that you can't do it if you need it. Again,
what's understood doesn't need to be explained.
Right. I'm going to disagree with both you guys. If you need a shoot around, you got to do a shoot around. That's on you. Show up and do it. Again, goes back to the players being professional. I think there is a huge issue with the players being professional on this team, and I think you see it in the results. That's why they're so inconsistent. I mean, you gave the record. At this point, they're 13-13. So they're so up and down. It's a good thing that they're a 500 team at this point, because there are games that they should be losing right now because they just don't show up, and somehow they're figuring out ways to win. And look, I go back and forth with Steve all the time on Twitter, all right? I love you, Steve. I do. I love you a lot. But Steve wants to get rid of everybody. He wants to fire SVG. He wants to basically blow up the entire team. And I get it. You're frustrated as a fan. I'm frustrated because they're just not doing things the right way. Reggie Jackson hasn't played most of this season. You've got a head coach who was able to sit there and get you to a 500 record without his starting point guard. This was a guy that he was counting on coming in and being there from the get-go of the season. And he finds out that he has knee tendonitis. And that's something that's not going to go away. It's not like you can have a surgery to fix it. It's one of those things where Stan Van Gundy has to be so hands-on with Reggie Jackson at this point. He's got to limit his minutes. He's got to watch how he plays him and watch what he does with him. So you put Stan Van Gundy in a bad spot now, and you got to watch Reggie Jackson. And your starting point guard hasn't been there. Look, Ish Smith did a very good job in his role. All right, you're like, Ish, we need you to kind of carry the team. We need you to help us out a little bit. You got to do some things. He did a very good job, all right? You've got a guy like Reggie Jackson who is now trying to find his way back onto this team, figure out his role and what he can do with this team. You got a head coach who's still trying to figure out the same exact thing, trying to work around his minutes, what his body will hold up, what he'll be able to do. Because you got to remember, Stan Van Gundy's not coaching for that night. Stan Van Gundy's coaching for the entire season. He's coaching for these guys to get into the playoffs and make a run in the playoffs. So he's got to think not just tonight, not tomorrow night, not next week, not next month, but he's thinking all the way into the summertime when they're playing in the playoffs. So if he limits Reggie Jackson's time now, does a few things different, he's got all these things in play. And again, it hurts the team because you haven't had Reggie Jackson for basically your first 26 games of the season. And all that time where you're sitting there preparing with the preseason, he wasn't there for any of that. He was hurt. And now he's got to work his way back into it. Stan Van Gundy's got to figure out how he can utilize him and how he can optimize his role with this team.
Yeah, so I would ask you, because when you looked at it, Ish Smith was a guy that was a backup with the Sixers, and he was emerging, and you kind of thought, okay, maybe with the tutelage of Stan Van Gundy, a guy like Ish Smith can come in and be a suitable backup. That's his role. But with the injury to Reggie Jackson, now he's thrust into the starting position, and he did serviceably well. He kind of ran the offense. He's not a shoot-first point guard. He distributed, and then you saw a stretch where they were able to go on the road and probably play 3 of their best games, where they swept the Hornets, Celtics, and the surprise to me was when you go out to play Atlanta and you dominate them and you play very well, you're like, okay. But now Reggie Jackson's now thrown into the mix, and they didn't kind of ease him in. They made him the starter. And so what's happened is Reggie needs volume. He needs to shoot. And so what happens is he needs to get his touches, which is now affecting everybody. And so when you got a situation where you're trying to reacclimate a guy like Reggie Jackson, you're seeing the struggles offensively. And specifically versus the 76ers, you saw a lot of situations where there were guys open on the perimeter and they took contested shots more often than not in their sets. And it was very challenging to watch that in terms of when you saw the offense with Ish Smith, it was much better run at this point in time. And the Pistons right now are 2-3 with Reggie Jackson back at the helm.
See, the big issue I have with Reggie Jackson, and you're right, I think maybe they did rush him a little bit, but again, I think that's Stan Van Gundy trying to figure out what he can do with Reggie at this point in the season and how he's going to play. The big issue I have with the comparison between Reggie Jackson and Ish Smith is in 5 less minutes of actual game time, Reggie Jackson is turning the ball over more than Ish Smith is. And turnovers leads to points on the other end, and you're taking points away from your team on the offensive side. So again, it's ball security, ball control. You're right. Ish Smith, when he was playing, looked like a much better option than Reggie Jackson at this time. I think Reggie's going to have to sit there and maybe it's more on Stan Van Gundy than Reggie Jackson. Maybe Stan Van Gundy's got to sit there and maybe limit the time, try to ease him back in. I think it's a big mistake trying to throw this guy in and say, hey, here, you're starting again. You get to carry this team. Here's the ball. Go do the damn thing. And you got a guy like Reggie Jackson like, well, hey, I've basically been laid up for, 8 weeks, maybe a little bit more. Maybe we should try to work me into this. And Stan's like, nope, go out there and play. I think that creates a little bit of an issue.
Blair, do you like Reggie's game?
I was going to say, here's the thing. I don't think that he was rushed back into it. I think that, coaches and players alike are thinking, long term. And the risk of additional injury, you don't want to risk that. It's too high. What I do feel like is in Reggie's case, you have to iron the kinks out. We all talk about when you have the talent, that's one thing, but being game ready and in shape for a game is totally different. It's going to take a while for him to get his legs back, but let's even talk about IQ. With the new matchup and the different matchups, even being able to calculate and know where to go on the court and where to look, it's just going to take a little bit of time to get back into that system. And I think that it's a good decision to have him out there, give him those those minutes, allow him to get up to speed so we can get going.
Yeah, I agree. It is going to take time. And so a lot of coaches, a lot of people will say you need about 20 games to see where this team is. And I don't think they're really a 500 team because the expectations for this team are really high. They don't need to be a team, anywhere between 5th and 8th in the East. They need to be a top 4 team. And I do believe they have that talent. And Reggie Jackson has to definitely step it up and lead this team a little bit better. But in the end, too, you also got to remember there was a key component missing in the game versus the Sixers. And when people go, is KCP worth $20 million? I would argue no, but when he was out, you saw that the Sixers were able to do whatever they needed to do, and they were making buckets.
He's your force. He's your force in the defensive end.
He's your force, and so you missed him greatly, and he'll be back. It was just a one-game thing, but KCP being gone, you saw a totally different defensive team, and so you battled that, and you got to have guys step up. But in that situation, KCP was gone versus Sixers. You saw the decline. But in the situation, I would say maybe when Reggie came back, you don't make him the starter. You have him come off the bench a little bit. Let Ish Smith see what he can do, knowing that potentially Reggie's there because he got on a roll and you just cut off the momentum. And so it's unfortunate because you really felt like, okay, they might have peaked and they might have played very, very well with Ish. And I don't think we're going to have the debate, but we're all watching. Maybe, just maybe, there's the wrong guy starting for the Pistons.
Look, another telling stat, too, is the assist-to-turnover ratio. Reggie Jackson averages 2 assists per every turnover, while Ish Smith is doling out 4.5 assists per his turnovers. So, again, it's securing the ball, and it's distributing it to who's got to get the ball. And like you said, Reggie Jackson is a volume shooter. He needs the ball in his hand to create. He needs the ball in his hand to shoot. He's got to do different things, and he's got to shoot a lot so he can make his buckets and get on a roll. So there's a lot of issues that kind of surround the play of Reggie Jackson at this time, and now add into it the issue that he had with his knees, and he's trying to work his way back into the flow of things.
Well, I was going to say we're talking about this whole who's starting, who's not, but we've seen a little bit of two-guard situation out there. Van Gundy has been marked down for saying he's looking for attacking of the basket and making points. So do you guys think that that's going to be a trend that we see with the Pistons moving forward? We're talking kind of who's starting, who's not, but you may catch them out on the court together a lot.
I think that could work. And again, it'll be one of those things where I think Reggie more naturally is a 2-guard, whereas Ish is more naturally a 1-guard. So I think it could work. And I don't think it would hurt the team at all because you've got 2 guys who can handle the ball. You've got 2 guys who can distribute the ball. And you've got a guy in Reggie Jackson who can shoot. Ish Smith's no slouch either, but Reggie's a little bit more offensively inclined when it comes to shooting. So I think that could work, and I think you may see that. That being said, like John was saying, when KCP's not out on the court, there is a huge letdown on the defensive side. Whether it's just Andre Drummond can't get big enough down low, Toby Harris isn't doing enough, whoever's handling the 2-guard spot at that time isn't sitting there D'ing up properly. There is a dramatic letdown when KCP's not on the floor as opposed to when he is on the floor, and I think that's why he plays so many minutes for this team.
Now, Adam, you brought up Steve and his interest in wanting Stan Van Gundy fired. I know he was definitely excited. He messaged me quite a bit. And so, obviously, what happened? Steve is on the line.
Oh, what's up, buddy?
Steve!
What's going on, fellas?
What's up, dude? I've been talking about you this entire podcast.
Oh, no.
It's not bad. It's not bad. It's just, it's about what we talk about on Twitter. That's all. It's all good, man.
Blair is here. We're talking about the Pistons, and we definitely mentioned your tweets regarding your thoughts about Stan Van Gundy. And I threw it out there before we started recording. What are your thoughts about the Pistons, Steve? 13-13 as we talk. We're rapping here a little bit about some of the struggles and things like that. What say you? What are your thoughts about this edition of the Pistons?
Well, first of all, hello, Blair. How are you, hon?
Hi, Steve. I just want to thank you for all of your support. I think I'm here today because you keep bugging these guys about getting me back on. So it's awesome to be here on Detroit Sports Podcast, and we've got Steve as the addition. So let's hear what you got to say about those Pistons.
The Pistons are terrible. Stan Van Gundy, he doesn't know how to use his bench. You're paying a guy, Boban, $32 million to be a human victory cigar. You have Reggie Bullock, who's hurt. Reggie Jackson is this He's still hurt. He doesn't have any depth on the bench, and he just doesn't know how to utilize what he has. He has a good nucleus. He just doesn't know how to put the pieces together.
Do you think the reason, because like I know me and you have discussed a couple different times about the usage of Boban and the way that Stan Van Gundy kind of plays him. I mean, you do realize that you've got Andre Drummond, who you've just signed to a massive contract. He's your starter. You also have a guy in Aaron Baines who could probably be a starter for, 20 other teams in the NBA, maybe a few more. So I just think it's more of a numbers game, and it's kind of a depth chart thing where you're going to go to your number one, you're going to go to your number two, and in the end, it just doesn't leave a lot of time for Boban.
Why isn't he giving him any playing time at all? Why isn't he let the kid play? He played him before when Drummond was hurt. He looked good. I like the way he looked. I like the way he played.
I really just think it's a numbers game. I don't see a way for Stan Van to be able to pull Drummond off the floor and sit there and make him ride the pine so you can basically play your third center. I just don't see that being a possibility, especially when you've got a guy like Aaron Baines who's Drummond's backup. And look, every time Baines is given an opportunity, he comes through. He looks good. The guy can sit there and handle the minutes. He can score. Defensively, he's responsible. He knows what he's doing on the floor. And Stan Van Gundy earlier this season basically talked about it and said, hey, look, this guy right here, he's like, I'm not supposed to say this, but I'm going to say it anyways. This guy right here would be a starter on any other team in the NBA.
He would.
I agree. So I just think it's a numbers issue. I think you've got too much.
Jordan could probably trade for him. He's got some depth on the chart that we could probably use.
What would you like to trade for then? If you're going to give up Aaron Baines, what do you want back?
I'm going to get another guard and maybe maybe a forward.
Okay, Steve, right now the Pistons are sitting at 13-13. Are you patient with the squad, or are you getting more and more frustrated? Because as a fan, you do see potential with this team. And you got to remember, too, there have been a couple injuries to the key guys. KCP missed a game. Reggie Jackson's just kind of working his way back. They're 2-3. You're not patient at all, willing to kind of give SVG a chance? I mean, they got to the postseason last year, and I do think if you pay attention...
Yeah, and they got swept by the champ. The Cavs, come on.
They did, but I would say for you, though, if you are a little bit more patient in the second half of the year, I do think you're going to see a better Piston team. But I don't think, I agree with you in that you do have room to be skeptical, but at the same time, I think that you're not seeing the true version of this Piston squad. I would say when we tweet again and have debates later on in the year, I think you'll see a team maybe 5 to 7 games above 500.
Yeah, if he puts the right pieces together, he's got a good team.
Steve, thank you so much. We're going to let you go. Thank you so much for calling in, talking to Blair. Any last words for Blair before we, hit the dump button?
Well, I just wanted to wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and hopefully you get back with the boys, and I'll still follow you on Twitter and watch you on YouTube, because I kind of figured that out where you were on there on the Charlotte Hornets. And then wish the boys a Happy New Year and a Merry Christmas. Tell Vito, same thing for me, even though he's not been talking to me, but that's okay.
I'll talk to Vito for you. Don't worry about it. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year's to you.
And I appreciate it. You have a wonderful Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take it easy, Steve. Look forward to talking to you.
Steven Frazier, great dude. He's a strong supporter of our project. And, it's always fun to let the fans kind of interact with us and do the business.
Late last week, all right, and this is something Steve and I kind of got into a little bit of a debate about on Twitter, all right? So there were rumors and speculations that the Pistons and the Pacers were linked into a monster trade involving Paul George. So my question is, would you be looking to do that? Because we're talking about possibly being able to get the Pistons fixed up, spice them up a little bit, make them look a little bit better. They're a 500 team. Expectations are that they'll be a much better team than that. And what ends up coming out is there's this rumors and speculation regarding this monster trade involving Paul George. And when I say monster trade, I mean this is huge, all right? So basically the Pistons would get Paul George and Monta Ellis from the Indiana Pacers. Right away, I'm kind of like, and I'll explain why in a minute. But the Pacers are then going to receive Tobias Harris, KCP, Stanley Johnson, Detroit's 2017 unprotected first-round pick, their 2018 second-round pick, and their 2019 unprotected first-round pick. So right there, I'm like, absolutely not. You're giving up way too much. And initially, look, when I was kind of rapping with Steve about this on Twitter, and the more and more I thought about it, I was like, this is just an awful trade for Detroit. I don't think Paul George is that great of a player where you're going to sit there and you're going to basically give up your best defensive guard in KCP. You're going to give up your first overall, your number one draft pick from a year ago in Stanley Johnson, a guy who looks like he has incredible talent, and then you're going to give up a guy who you traded for last season who was basically a difference maker and helped your offense flow more completely with Tobias Harris. And now you couple that in by adding a first-round pick from 2017, which is, again, unprotected, which means it's going to them no matter what. You add a 2019 unprotected pick, and then you add in your second-round pick from 2018. So you're giving up 3 draft picks. And look, the way this team is built, it's built to be young, it's built to grow together, and it's built to be talented over the long haul. So you're going to give up on all of that to go get a guy like Paul George, who I think's on the downside of his career. I don't think he's what he used to be. His name doesn't do it for me. He's not a big enough star, if that's what you're looking for. In Monta Ellis, who's kind of a throw-in. I just don't see it. I think that would be an awful trade. And I know a lot of people were hot about it and like, yeah, let's discuss this. Let's do this. And I'm just like, why would you want to do this? You basically then just blew up the entire core of your team, and you gave up a bunch of future assets, which are going to help you build for the future and be strong in the future. I just don't get it.
Oh, I'm going to say that initially I was like, Paul George, yes. And then I got to this, but wait. So I think I'm on the same side of things with you. It's going to take some real team engineering to build. How do you build around Paul George when you're taking away such key elements? And I'm going to tell you, we may not touch on it today, but these upcoming drafts, especially starting with 2017, you are going to see the league begin to change. The league is gonna shift, starting with, I mean, we've got some players in the NBA already kind of coming into ranks. But this 2017 draft is going to be so loaded, leading into 2018 and maybe even 2019. There's like super talent coming down the pipeline. So you've got to be careful and position yourself for the future. So it's really tricky to think about that.
No, exactly. And kind of the way I kind of looked at it was a lot of people kind of debunked it early as being rumors. But when it gets to that specific in terms of what's going to be offered, you were going to give up way too much. You know, Stanley Johnson, KCP, multiple draft picks. But I kind of like to maybe do a little bit of conspiracy theory and maybe, just maybe, SVG let that kind of slip out a little bit, and maybe in an effort to kind of show a Stanley Johnson and to show a KCP that, hey, you may think you have your spot locked up, but at any minute, at any moment, we could float your name out there to be shipped off. And a guy like Stanley Johnson is an enigma, and it's a situation where when we talk about a guy, you got to remember, dude's only 20 years old. And he goes to Grand Rapids, not as a punishment. A lot of people are viewing it as, oh, you sent your first-round pick to the minors, he stinks. No, the situation was he went to the minors because he was averaging 3 minutes a game. And you got to play the guy. He just couldn't find his way into the rotation because, yes, he has been struggling. His game is not where it needs to be, but he's got game. The problem is, and the reason why it's tough is, unfortunately with Stanley Johnson, we got to use the dreaded P word, patience. We got to be patient with him, but unfortunately right now, because the Pistons have struggled for so much, and they've only just now started to get to the postseason, and when you got there last year, you only had, a sniff, not even a victory. So you had an opportunity to see what this team could be like, but I think if you let it play out a couple of years from now, you might be rewarded with a combination of a Stanley Johnson, if he develops, KCP, who is strong defensively and can shoot lights out at any given moment, Reggie Jackson and Andre Drummond. You add another piece to that in the coming years, you have the makings of a solid team. But the problem is, though, and I think it was a mistake, SVG floated out there that Stanley was a little bit lazy maybe in the offseason and maybe didn't put in the work that he needed to take that big step from year 1 to year 2. I understand why you would do that, but you also got to remember that in this day and age, if you lose a player and you start putting chinks in his ego, you start floating out there trade rumors, calling him lazy in the public, you might start, getting his talent in 3 to 4 years and he's out. For whatever reason, he's like, I'm not negotiating with you, or he'll set a price so high that you're going to have to trade him. So it's a fine line, but with Stanley Johnson, I'd like to see him a little bit further along. He could really help this team, but averaging 3 minutes and not even 5 points a game isn't helping your team. It hurts.
I think there's a lot of frustration with Stanley Johnson's performance this year. At the end of last season, you got to remember what all he did. He was able to sit there during that playoff run for, I believe it was just game 1. He was able to frustrate King James, frustrated the shit out of him, all right? And then after that, LeBron was LeBron and kind of dismantled and did his thing. And the whole time, Stanley Johnson just kind of talked. So maybe Stanley Johnson's egos got the best of him going into the offseason. There were certain things that I think Stan Van Gundy had discussed with him and said, hey, I want you to work on this. You got to get better at that. If you come back next season and you've taken care of all these things, you're probably looking at a starting position, which is huge. It's huge for a player coming out of his, going into his second year. That's a big deal. And I just don't think Stanley put the necessary time in. So you're right. There's a whole lot of drama surrounding Stanley Johnson. And I don't think it's good for the Pistons overall. And I think you kind of touched on something there where Stan Van Gundy doesn't ever hold anything back. If he's got an issue with you, he lets it be known. And it's kind of his way of talking through the media to get to his player. And you're right. They did send him down to Grand Rapids to sit there just to get some game time, just to do some things, get some work in, because he wasn't seeing any playing time. He was totally scratched from games because Stan Van Gundy was sending a message. So there are things that he has to work on. There has to be a maturity that has to come along with Stanley Johnson during his second year.
I think what you guys have said is true. I'm not disagreeing. I think with Stanley Johnson, confidence is key. Production is also key, right? So it's just a fine line between the both of those. And he's a late bloomer, but SVG believes in him and he thinks the investment is worth it. It's almost like a parent-child relationship. When you're at home, you have issues, you get out in the public, if they act up, you have to address it in some sort of way. But overall, you believe in him as a player and he wants to get him going. So I think definitely you don't want to lose the talent. You want to give it time to develop and see where it goes.
I would say this next stretch of games is going to be important. The week of the 21st through the 28th, you have a stretch of games at home. You have an opportunity to kind of regroup and reset. So I do agree with the skepticism regarding the Pistons right now because they're underperforming, but I do believe they will turn it around. I don't think this is a 500 team. If they are, and that's how it shakes out, you're going to probably see some changes being made, either with a couple guys maybe being traded, or potentially the seat gets a little bit hotter for SVG because expectations are higher. And I do believe this is a team that can be a 4 seed and do some things in the postseason if they get hot at the right time. So with the Pistons team, I would say be a little bit patient, watch what they're doing, and really try and stick with the team and support them. But at the same time, you do got to make sure that this squad stays together and you continue to see everybody get better. And it's very interesting what Steve said in terms of the use of the rotation. And that's something that is always questioned when a team struggles is who's on the court versus who's sitting on the bench. And if there are other guys that can maybe help this team, you might, I would ask you, which one guy, if you think, should be not in the starting lineup and maybe could be sent out and have someone else in? Is it Baines? Is it Boban? Who is it? Someone else that maybe you could insert to spice things up a little bit, or no?
At this point, I think you really have to figure out what Stanley or what Reggie Jackson's going to give you. It's, again, he basically wasn't there for the majority of the season thus far. You don't know where he's at. You don't know what his chemistry is with the guys on the floor. You totally missed all of that time in the preseason. Usually that time in the preseason it's all just chemistry. It's just, hey, I can sit there and give you a no-look pass and I know you'll be there. It's sitting there trusting, the pick and roll. And these are all things that have hampered this team during this stretch of just up and down play. Is the pick and roll's not good. They're not shooting well. They're not playing well defensively. And again, defensive play, that's more just trusting your guys and knowing that they've got your back if you sit there and you're out of position. So I think you got to figure out what Reggie Jackson's going to give you over this next stretch of games. Again, like you were saying, normally 20 games in, you know what this team is. For the Pistons, it's probably not going to be until game 35 that you really figure out what they are, because you've got to see what Reggie Jackson's going to give you night in and night out, and whether or not his body's going to be able to hold up to the rigors of the season and how he's going to be utilized by Stan Van Gundy. So I think you got to give it some more time, and I think it all hinges on what Reggie Jackson gives you.
All right, good talk regarding the Pistons. Caller Steve chimed in. We'll take our final timeout. We're going to end the podcast talking about our Detroit Lions, the nervousness. I'm interested to gauge your guys' assessment of how nervous you are regarding the future, and we'll talk about the MVP of the team, Matthew Stafford, and the potential chances that this team could go 3-0 or 0-3, and it's teetering. There's a lot of people going back and forth. We'll get into it next on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Doc and Jock here for Fanatic U. If you're looking for some sweet sports swag and you love your Detroit teams, and I mean you really love your Detroit teams, you got to check out fanaticu.com and get the coolest gear out there and rock your Red Wings shirt, rock your Lions shirt, rock your Piston apparel. Wear it till the wheels fall off. Michigan State, you know what? They got it too. Check out Fanaticu. They have 6 locations all over Metro Detroit. Check them out, fanaticu.com.
Yeah, we coming now. Come on. Yeah, that's right. We put it down. It's like a family in here, just a little disabled. Putting it down, we lay them out on the table. Yeah. Who's in the house? The brothers in the house. Gotta turn it on out, let you know what we about. Kinda like Cain and Abel, a bit unstable. Don't be breaking the brain, break the whole damn table.
All right, episode 175, rolling right along, having a great time with Blair and Adam. You're listening to the Doc and Jock podcast. Thanks again for all the great support, for everybody following us on Twitter at Detroit Podcast, for everybody checking out our website. A great year for DetroitSportsPodcast.com. A new change, one that we finally made. Initially, we never had the player directly on the website, but at this point in time, we said, what the heck? People want to see, we want to add as many ways as possible for you to find the podcast, whether it be on iTunes, Podomatic, Stitcher, Podbay, and now if you go to DetroitSportsPodcast.com, right there, smack dab in the homepage, you can find the player of the day's episode. Push the button, takes you 1 second, find it, push the button. Thank you so much for those that have been downloading, subscribing on iTunes, and we thank those supporters like Blair, who when they come on, they get involved with social media and get excited about coming on. That's what we really love. Adam and I couldn't be doing this. We couldn't keep the lights on or the mics hot here in the studio without everybody's support, so we greatly appreciate it, and we always take time on our episodes to give thanks, and especially in this day and age, we want to give back and things like that. But to finish the podcast, we got to talk about the Detroit Lions and where they're at right now. Sitting at 9-4, we got a football team this close, we can almost taste it, this close to the division, this close to maybe a bye, this close to holding on to a number 2 seed. But oh, it comes with a price. It comes with drama. It can never be easy. And Adam and I, Blair, have always said that the Lions just cannot handle success. With success is going to come some controversy, some adversity. And this year, it does not fail to deliver. We're 9-4. We're playing great ball. You got Matthew Stafford about to be the highest paid player in the entire NFL. What happens? Boom. He gets hit, and his throwing finger, his digit, his middle finger, has now been dislocated and a torn ligament. Now, many people are discussing it, debating it back and forth. Hey, can you tape the finger together? How's it going to affect his throw? We're looking at how he played in 2011 when he had the same kind of injury problem, and you just saw it in the game versus the Bears. The zip wasn't there when it wasn't there as well, and his accuracy was a little bit off versus the Bears. And sitting here today, I'm a little bit nervous regarding Stafford's digit, because if he's not 100%, I'm not so certain that he can lead this team to victories, because he's got to be on point, he's got to be accurate, and one key that I've asked for and everybody's looked at is when they do take a chance, it's resulted more times than not in some success, whether it be a penalty on Marvin Jones, helping the run game a little bit. So they're going to have to try to throw the ball a little bit. How is it going to affect Stafford? So people are a little bit nervous, and I'm definitely the champion of the nerves, man. I'm anxious.
Yeah, I think you have to be concerned. You do me a favor. Grab that football behind you for me. All right? So you absolutely have to be concerned, right? I have major concerns about it. You've got to remember, Matt Stafford started off the game against the Bears going 6 of 7, right? So then right after the injury, he's got the adrenaline flowing. He goes 6 of 7 again. So it didn't seem to affect him too much, but I think that was just because, like I said, the adrenaline was going through him, and he was good to go. After that, 9 of 20, only threw for 90 yards and 2 INTs. Now, I'm holding this football in my hand right now, all right? And he hurt his middle finger, so this one right here. It does help you grip the football a little bit, but I could sit there and I could make a case. He's got much bigger hands than I do. I've got fat little Polish stubby fingers here. I can make a case that I don't necessarily need that finger. And the hand injury that he had before was to his, I believe it was his index finger, which plays a much more key role in all of this. So I think you can get away with him doing what he has to do. On top of it, if you were to buddy tape the fingers together, it'd look something like that, and I think that could work as well. So I don't know. I talked to a medical professional. My wife's a nurse, and I asked her, I said, hey, can you play with a dislocated dislocated middle finger and a torn ligament? And she said, it probably wouldn't be the best thing, but you could do it. And I said, does it make that big of a difference once they set the finger back in? She's like, it just needs time to heal, and it really shouldn't cause too much of an issue for you. And I said, all right, well, that's good to hear. And she's like, why do you ask? I said, well, Matt Stafford's dislocated his finger and he tore a ligament in it. And she said, oh, okay. Well, how did he do? And I kind of gave her the rundown. She's like, well, that kind of makes sense. They'll kind of work on some things, and he should be fine. So I think there are some concerns there because you've seen what he gave you that second half of that football game. The 2 interceptions, one of them wasn't his fault. One of those was absolutely his fault. Going 9 of 20, not being able to throw the ball down the field, not being able to have touch on the ball, those are all major issues for this team. And I know you like to go deep with the passing game. I think they're going to have to sit there and they're going to have to adjust now. You're going to see a lot of stuff underneath. You're going to see a lot of dump-offs. You're going to see a lot of checkdowns. And I think that's just the way that this team's going to have to play to be successful, especially dealing with this injury. Now, Matt Stafford has come out on Wednesday afternoon and basically said, I'm not sure if I'm going to play with the glove. Now, if you remember, he played with a glove, I believe it was in 2011 when he hurt the index finger, played absolutely atrocious. It was brutal, all right? He tried playing with the glove throughout Sunday's game, and you got mixed results. Like I said, right after he hurt the finger, he went 6 of 7. That's great. Ended up leading to a touchdown. After that, went 9 of 20. Not so good. And he had the 2 INTs. So it's going to be one of those things. He's going to work through it. I don't necessarily think it's going to be that big of a deal. I think it will hamper some things. My big concern is it's going to be cold in New York. All right? It's where they're playing. It's going to be ice cold in New York. Cold weather, broken bones, dislocated fingers or dislocated joints, and ligaments that are torn. The cold is no bueno. It's not good for it. Generally, some conditions like what you have at Ford Field are much better. So that's where I get my concern is how is it going to affect the injury? Is it going to make it worse, or is this something that they can just kind of work around, and will he be okay? Like I said, you don't necessarily need that finger. All you need the pinky and the, I don't know, it's not the ring finger, the finger next to the pinky. That those are important in your index finger because your index finger is really kind of where you kind of pinch the ball with the thumb. So you don't need that middle finger.
Now, Blair, what's your current investment with the Lions? Are you one of the people that always looks to same old Lions whenever there's adversity? Are you a big football fan? Are you on board with this 9-4 team? Because a lot of people are, the best way to describe it, cautiously optimistic. They want to be supportive, but they don't want to feel that same heartbreak that we're known to kind of experience year in and year out. And this year could provide for the ultimate same old Lions should they go 0-3 if Stafford is really hurt. What's your take on the Lions, and are you really, and what's your investment level with them? Do you go, hey, I'm all in, I'm a fan, ride or die, I don't care. If they're up, I'm with them. If they go down, there's always next year. What's your current investment like? Because Adam and I, we're diehard fans. We live and die with the team, and we're like a roller coaster. We go up and down.
I've almost broke my TV 7 times this season.
we go all around with the Lions. Sometimes we give up on them. Sometimes we're like, I can't believe we watch, but we're always there with them. What's your investment like?
Week 4, I buried this team. I said, blow it up. They're absolutely atrocious.
So I have never left the Lions. I am always on board with the Lions, win or lose, no matter what state I'm in. I may not be as vocal, but I'm always on board with them. And I'm going to say I feel good to be back at this time. Matt's finger injury or any injury is kind of always a concern, but it's not a big concern in my book. If wrapping it, he can still get his job done. My concern is not injuring it further. That's my biggest concern. And here's what I have to say about the team now. It's not like the NBA. We don't get a 7-game series. Every game is like live or die out there. So we can't risk kind of babysitting his finger. He's a professional. He wants to play. Let him play. Let's try to get the job done. I think that's where I am with the Lions. And I had the chance to see them out there against the Bears the other day. And it was my first time back seeing a game in a while. And you know what? We're from Detroit. Those Lions can get us going and they can drop us low. But I was so excited that they won the game. And here's what we have to remember about Matt Stafford. This is for anybody who's riding the fence. You need some motivation like on a Sunday morning. You got to realize that Stafford has made NFL history. He surpassed Peyton Manning for the most comebacks in fourth quarter.
Hey, that's unbelievable.
And it's almost unbelievable, but it's definitely the truth. So I think this is a time not to be on the fence. Be with the team. They're going to need all of that positive energy going forward.
Matt Stafford's a tough dude, too. If you remember, I think it was his rookie campaign. It was that game against Cleveland when I think it was Sean Rodgers of the Browns threw him down and broke it. I don't know if it was a collarbone or a shoulder, whatever. It was the whole mic'd up play. And next thing you know, they sit there, they take a timeout. He needed to come off the field, but because they took a timeout, he was able to play. Comes back out, can hardly lift his shoulder or lift his arm, and he ends up throwing a game-winning touchdown. So you know he's a tough dude. Absolutely. You can't ever question that about Matt Stafford. It's just, how is he going to be able to play through this? And other players are going to be targeting that finger. This is something that's now out there. And as a Lions fan, as a Lions player, you know this. You know the dirty part of football is other guys are going to target that. Any type of advantage you can get to win a game, you're going to do it. And the Giants are right there. They're sitting there competing with Dallas for a spot in the playoffs, you know? I mean, at this point, it looks like they might have a wild card spot, but you just beat Dallas, one of the best teams in all of the NFL. If you can sit there and you can get hot and Dallas maybe goes on a little bit of a tailspin here, you're going to sit there and take over either the first or the second place in all of the NFC. So the Giants want this just as much as the Lions want it. They're going to target that finger. He's got to be able to sit there and find some way to protect it and be able to play through it.
Now, Blair, what was your trek like to Ford Field and leaving? Because Sunday, everyone kind of thought that the crowd was very quiet because it was late arriving. What was your experience? You get there early, or do you brave the cold and get there around 12:30, stand in line, freezing in security? What was your experience like?
No way.
VIP for Blair. You walked right in, right? You had.
I walked right in. I kid you not. No, I'm just joking. I walked to will call and then I walked right in. But I did not want to get down there at 12 noon. I took my brothers and my nephews and we parked, and then we took an Uber as close as we could get to the stadium. I think I had like a 2-block walk. We stood in line, not too long, but the snow was kind of like pouring down. So for people who stood out there and they tailgated in that, those are really diehard Lions fans because like Adam called it earlier, it was almost like Snowmageddon. It was coming down so fast and so big.
Those people smart or absolutely stupid for tailgating in weather like that?
I did. Let me tell you one quick story. I did. I was a season ticket holder for about 6 years.
You and Kenny.
Me and Kenny during the Matt Millen era. And this time of year would be nightmares for me because I'd be like, we're going to freeze. But we started to do something that was actually pretty bright and it actually helped us out. We got heat in that we took charcoal, raw charcoal, heated it up, put it under our feet, and it would kind of really warm everything up. And I remember days like that where you light up a charcoal brisket. You light one or two of them up, put them on the ground, and the heat continuously rises.
Did you stand on them? How did you do this?
No,
like in front of you?
No, you put them like maybe on the barbecue pan, like on the bottom or something, so you have a heat source. Or when you're barbecuing too, you have a heat source as well.
I got you. So it was near you. You weren't on top of it. It wasn't, okay, I got
think that goes with these people are really smart.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah.
There are ways to stay warm.
Gotcha.
That's the key, but we froze. I remember I was like, I don't know, man. These games are tough, man. But we lit charcoal and we stood around the fire a little bit and we got through it. And it was crazy. But yeah, Matt Millen in that era, we stopped after the numerous amount of losses. We couldn't handle it anymore. But this is a new era. And that's why I think I have a little bit more faith, but I still have those flashbacks that come in my mind like, it's going to collapse. This is going to happen. Because I remember games where we'd come back, we'd miss the extra point. I remember games where we'd have leads and it wouldn't happen. Every kind of way in which to lose, I've seen the Lions lose. And
they invent new ways to lose.
And now we have a chance to have victory, and our quarterback could be hurt. And so I'm asking you, if the Lions in the next 3 games, would you lean towards them being more, having more of an opportunity to go 3-0 or 0-3 and collapse? Because it's like right on the fence. You could make arguments exactly on both sides. You could say, you know what? This defense is playing great. Stafford can get through it. Maybe if Theo Riddick comes back and the emergence of DeAndre Levy, you have an opportunity maybe to win these next 3 games and shut everybody up, go 12-4. Or at the same time, you could go to New York and lay an egg, go on Monday night and have Dak Prescott want to show the world his stuff and dance all over you, and Ezekiel Elliott run for 200 yards, and then January 1st you come back home and all the pressure's on you and you lay an egg there. I could see them going 0-3, so I can't take a stance because I'm right there. I could say either way I wouldn't be surprised, but I'm hoping. I got my little fan fingers crossed that this team's going to go 3-0, 2-1, and get to the postseason. Because, hey, if they just win versus the Giants, go all in. Everything you got versus the Giants, and Green Bay loses, you're in.
This is the thing. Because I'm like right in the middle about it. You
have to be, yeah.
It's so weird because prior history tells you that they're going to blow it. They're going to go 0-3, right? But if you look at what this team has done, and you look at the way that they have played, and you kind of look at the way the schedule kind of lays out, they have a great shot to go 3-0. If I had to put a 51%, if I had to lean just a little bit more one way than the other way, I'm going to go 3-0. And maybe it's just hopeful Lions. Maybe it's just me being a fanboy. Maybe it's me wanting them to win so bad. But the way I look at it, right, you're going to head into New Jersey this weekend. You're going to play the Giants. This is a game I think they should win. All right, and the reason I say that is the Giants' offense isn't very good. Their defense is solid, but they're missing probably their best defensive player, and with JPP going out with a sports hernia. So now this is prime opportunities for Matt Stafford and for that offense to take advantage. All right, I see them being able to sit there and get the ball down the field. I see them maybe not being able to run the ball extremely well, but I think the run game is going to play a factor in this game. I can see this offense putting up enough points, even with Matt Stafford's injured finger, to be able to pull this game out. And I think that defense sits there and turns over Eli Manning a few times. And I think they get in Odell Beckham Jr.'s head a little bit. Now, you move ahead a little bit and you take a look at what's going on with Dallas. Dak Prescott, the last couple games, he's not played real well. He's struggled a little bit, and now the burner's kind of getting turned up there in Dallas, and there's some talk, and you got... I just don't understand why Jerry Jones has to open his mouth. I just don't get it, because he just opens his mouth, insert the foot, and it's all bad news, all right? So Jerry Jones is down there talking, and he has some type of a male crush on Tony Romo. That's his dude. That's his boy. So expect the burner to get turned up even more, and expect for the calls for Tony Romo to come in. Now, does that play into Dak Prescott's mind a little bit? I think they're trying to open up that playbook a little too much, and what you're doing is you're putting a whole lot on a rookie quarterback's plate, and he's been struggling with it a little bit. So I think they can sit there, and there's enough turmoil now surrounding Dallas, who, unbelievable that there's even turmoil surrounding this team at 11-2 and number 1 in the NFC. Blows my mind. But there's enough turmoil around them to where maybe Tony Romo comes in. All right, and you got a rusty Tony Romo. He does have experience, but he's rusty. He hasn't played all season. And then you sit there and now you look at that Green Bay game. If everything comes down to that Green Bay game,
get nervous, baby. Get nervous.
I have no idea what to do with myself. It's just, I don't even know if I want to watch that. And you got to realize what Green Bay's got ahead of them now. All right, Green Bay has an easier schedule than the Lions. They're going to go on. They're going to take on the Bears this week. After that, they're going to take on Minnesota at home, and then they're going to come and play your Detroit Lions at Ford Field. It sets up perfectly for Green Bay to sit there and come in and match up with the Lions and basically have everything on the line New Year's Day. So it's going to be interesting the way this works out, but I think they've got a shot to go 3-0. I really do. I think Detroit can hang with Green Bay. I think that they have come far enough along. On top of it, you got to realize Aaron Rodgers is dealing with a calf injury, a hamstring injury. That offensive line has gelled and come together a whole lot better than I think we ever expected. They don't have a running game, but the Lions don't have a running game either. I think our defense can contain Aaron Rodgers and that offense. I do. And I think Matt Stafford and the core of wide receivers we have are probably better than what Green Bay has, and I think that might be the difference.
But doesn't part of you want to kind of just be more cautious and just say, listen, I got to spare myself the misery and just say maybe, let's say the Lions go 2-1 and maybe it can help.
You don't want to get too high and you don't want to get too low here because
exactly.
The Lions crush you every time.
Exactly. You want to be cautiously optimistic, but you want to get the job done beforehand. And I would make the case, hey, you go play the Giants well and you play you play Dallas well on Monday night, you could make the case that Green Bay game on January 1st, we could rest Stafford. You could rest him, maybe get a bye. So
I don't think you're resting Stafford, but I see what you're saying.
Hey, if Caldwell has something...
I think you play it like it's a preseason game. He gets the first quarter, maybe the second quarter, and then after that, if nothing's on the line.
Well, let me ask you this real fast. Hey,
resting.
If they've secured the bye and the division that last game, I rest Stafford, no doubt about it, because he's the singular most important guy on the team. You rest him because if he injures that finger more, to Blair's point, and he can't play as well, you're going to need him in any first-round matchup.
The one guy you couldn't afford to get hurt.
He got hurt.
Here's a guy who should be mentioned in the MVP conversation. Here's a guy who has accounted for this team winning as many games as they have won this season. He is the reason that you're in the driver's seat in the NFC North right now, and you have a shot at a bye week in the playoffs, all right? And this is a guy who now has a damaged digit, and like we just said, he's the one guy that you can't afford to get hurt, and he's now hurt. So you now have to trust this guy to get you into the playoffs and help you win a game, maybe 2 games, and help get you to that crowning achievement moment where you win a Super Bowl. And I do believe Matt Stafford should be mentioned in conversations for the MVP. And he's the one guy that we're going to have to lean on now down this stretch. You got 3 games left. He's the one guy who's got to stay healthy enough to help these guys win.
Listen, Matthew Stafford is the key, but also at the same time, I give value and respect to that defense. Both coordinators, Terrell Austin and Jim Bob Cooter, have elevated themselves throughout this year to probably be in conversations for jobs in the coming years as head coaches. It's an interesting situation now in that we're starting to talk about Jim Caldwell being an effective leader. He's getting a little bit better in terms of in-game coaching. And so the way I'm looking at it is every week he has a new message. And right now you're looking at a team that's on the verge of the playoffs, getting a game at home at Ford Field in front of our fans. That has to be the rallying cry. That has to be something that's going to be emphasized week in, week out down the stretch here. And so I believe that this week going into the Giants, you're going to get a solid performance. Win or lose, it's going to be yet to be seen what's going to happen. It's 2 teams that are evenly matched. They both struggle at times on offense to be consistent, but they both, in the end, make key plays to try to win it. The Lions have to stop Odell Beckham, force some turnovers from Eli Manning, and I do believe no matter what happens, they're going to put their best foot forward and really try to get that victory. And I'm hoping they come back 10-4. They have a strong opportunity to do it because the Giants aren't that much better. And I really think that they're going to go all out and put on the best performance possible so that we can be, maybe on the verge of a postseason berth. And I think we're close. We're close. And so I think that it's something where when we talk about the Lions, it's a little bit more hopeful than in the past. They're proving all the pundits wrong. That's all you can ask for, man. I'm excited to see it. I can't wait for Sunday.
Yeah, Sunday's game, they should win this game. I really deep down feel that they should win this game, and I believe that they will. I expect Matt Stafford to sit there, again, utilize the screen game, do a lot of short passes. I think at certain points they'll open it up a little bit, maybe go deep. I don't expect that to be a huge part of the offense, though, just because of the issue with the finger. I do like the addition of what DeAndre Levy has brought to this team. If you noticed, we didn't get burned by a tight end against the Bears. And again, that's something I think DeAndre Levy really helps out a lot with, is sitting there covering the tight ends. He's super fast. He's agile. He is an elite linebacker when he's healthy. So him coming back and kind of working through some things, I think that bodes well for this team. He is probably the most explosive player you have on defense. And we were talking about the one thing that they need to help separate them and help get them to that next level. They need some explosive guys. You get a guy like DeAndre Levy back, there's some explosiveness. So I expect the offense to sit there and utilize the short passing game. Expect the run game to kind of come along. I don't expect it to be leaned on as heavy, but I think it's going to be there. It has to be there. That's the way they're going to win this game. And as far as defense goes, this defense has struggled to sit there and pressure the quarterback. And Eli Manning does a very poor job when he's under duress. So I don't see them necessarily pressuring the quarterback unless they're sending some linebackers in there to get after him. But I do expect Eli Manning to turn the ball over at least once, and I think that'll probably be the difference in the game.
I think 2 quick things. Dear Stafford, on my Christmas wish list, please don't scare us and give us heart attacks passing with double coverage. That's my only request. I am rooting for the Lions. I just don't want to see a lot of that in these games. And ideally, I'd like to write a letter to the football net for Odell Beckham. If he can get frustrated with that thing, we're in there.
Yes, sir.
If he just get tackled by it, it'd be great.
Great podcast. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Blair, a great addition. You know you have an open invitation. Anytime you want to peek in, Blair has done a lot for us. Even this very hour, we got a chance to see how video works. Maybe we'll add video stream to this. And she's provided some great insight, that strong female voice that we always like here on the Detroit Sports Podcast. So I appreciate it. Great podcast. Check out Blair and her great insights on the Pistons, the Lions. A great, great podcast. Thank you, cuz. For the Jock, Adam Strozinski, I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Thanks again to Blair. You can follow her on Twitter at BlairOnAir1. See everybody next time.
Go Lions.
This was locker room talk.
Second dick.
Sorry, Detroit. Didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I hear voices in my head. They count. out to me, they understand, they talk to me.